Who's here? Who's here? Who's that? Who's that? You're here at 3 o'clock. Welcome. It is good to see you. Good to see you. Hello, 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 hello. Who's here? I want to know. We're going to be starting in just a minute. And I am thinking a little bit about a couple things that I need. So I am looking for a bag. Nothing is impossible. You are so right. I am really excited to be with you guys today. Thank you for being here and welcome. Happy end of 2020. It is the New Year's Eve, and I am super, super excited about what is happening right now. I did want to touch base with you because I am in need of talking to somebody because I've been gardening a whole bunch today. Miss Rainey has been doing a whole bunch of awesome work. And I've been working in my backyard and enjoying these days where it's not too cold to be in a long sleeve shirt and working outside. And that is one of the blessings of living where I do, because right now it's still pretty mild out. In fact, it's going to rain tonight, and that's really great. So I've been working in the backyard. But one of the things that I was thinking about is Miss Rainey and I have been having this conversation for a little while about all of the people in the world right now who can't wait for 2020 to be over. You know what I'm talking about? That idea that they just, if we could just get beyond 2020. And I was thinking a whole bunch about the fact that I don't really feel like that. In fact, I wish there was more 2020 because the passing of days just kind of means that time is going by faster than I probably wanted to in the big picture, if you know what I'm saying. And so I have been thinking a whole bunch about that today, about how we always talk about it in our class, that today is the only today that you have, and I hope you make it the very best possible today that you can. And then we say, good day, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody responds. And it's a really, really nice way to start your day, right? And so that idea that today is the only today that we have. And so I always want to ask, especially on the last day of this year, how would I want to make sure I spend my days from today on, right? Like moving it on. And I think a little bit about Minli. I'm thinking a little bit about the idea of, she could be staying in the shadow of Fruitless Mountain, in the thick mud, planting rice. But her dad has sparked these dreams, these stories, these ideas that there might be something greater out there. And she is being taken there, right? And so I'm super excited about where we're at in the story. Like, remember we talked about this idea, we're on chapter 13, right? But I've been thinking a whole bunch about how important it is that we got chapters 1 through 13. And if we don't get that, we miss a whole bunch of things. I mean, think about it. What have you now gotten into? This is the exposition, right? That's the fancy term for the introduction of your setting. Where is this thing taking place? Now we know about Fruitless Mountain. We know that there's another place called Never Ending Mountain. We know that there's the Jade River, and that the dragons created the Jade River and the 4 great rivers beyond that. We know that Minli's family works very hard for very little money. We are overwhelmed with this brownness, this lack of a fortune, right? And Minli happens, then we talk about kind of plot, right? Well, first character. Let's talk about character. So we've got Minli, right? Little girl dreamer. We have Ba, the storyteller. We have Ma, the sire, right? The one who's always going to be a little nervous. You have somebody like that. Hey, JP, what's going on, Jay Patel? Good to see you. And so we've got them. But then we also have introductions of some other characters. Now, Ma, Ba, and Minli are a must. They are absolutes, right? Everybody else is going to help these three kind of find their thing, right? Like that's what the story is going to be about. So then we talk about plot. Poor. No real hope. Pretty much stuck in the mud. That's an idiom, right? Then we have this idea of two coins. Two coins put in a little bowl with a rabbit on it. That comes up later, right? That bowl comes up later. But then you've got the goldfish man. And without the goldfish man, think about what would happen if the goldfish man never came to town. She wouldn't have spent the money. She wouldn't have the goldfish. She wouldn't have felt bad at dinner time. She wouldn't have taken it to the river and been shown how to get to Neverending Mountain, where the old man of the moon is. Oh my gosh. Follow it? So this is awesome. This is the story, right? Like this is where we're at. So now we've got all the people, and of course the dragon and the monkeys, right? Like we're getting into the monkeys now. So what is all of this going to lead to? Your question at this point is, will she find Neverending Mountain and the old man on the moon, right? I mean, that's why we're going to continue to show up at 3:00, why we are participating in this experience, right? Otherwise, you could just turn this off and go play your video games or, I don't know, knit, or maybe Mag, you could bake something really yummy for us. Yeah, Kate, you could be baking a cake. But the other part is that we love to hear stories. We want to know what happens, right? So now the exposition is over. And now we're on the journey. And notice how these characters start getting introduced, kind of like, ever seen The Wizard of Oz? It's kind of like that, right? Like Dorothy is dropped into a place and doesn't know what's going on. And all of a sudden, the Munchkins give her a little bit of a goal to go out and seek, follow the Yellow Brick Road. Then, all of a sudden, a scarecrow shows up, and a Tin Man, and a lion. But they all need something. And so they go along on the ride, too. We have a sad dragon who can't fly, who came from some weird drawing that was given to Magistrate Tiger. And when Magistrate Tiger put on some eyeballs, it all of a sudden flew out and broke out and has been hiding in the forest. Do you believe it? Is this real? I don't know. Minli said that she finally met a real dragon, right? So this is where I sit at the beginning of chapter 13. Now, I know I have been spending some time sharing with you these pictures. I hope that you've been catching on. You should probably be going back to those pictures and kind of see how those things represent themselves in what is ahead, right? This is what you get to do as far as an inference goes. You get to kind of make a guess based on what you know and what your life has taught you about what might those symbols in the picture represent. So check this out. We got a fish. We've met a goldfish, maybe. There's waves, and there's maybe water coming out of his mouth. I don't know, but what will this mean, right? Okay, so chapter 13. Wait, that's on chapter 16. Sorry, chapter 13. Don't look at that picture yet. Look at this picture. Oh, Peaches. Who's in charge of Peaches? After cutting the dragon free, Minli's knife was dull, and the skin on her fingers and toes was wrinkled from having been in the dragon's lake of tears for so long. She was also very thirsty. I guess you can't drink salty tear water, right? That would be gross. The dragon offered to carry her to the freshwater stream. He knew the forest well. "You'll get there much faster," he said. Minli was a little doubtful about riding the dragon. It was one thing to climb on top of him while he was half covered by water. But now, on dry land, she realized how large he truly was. The dragon was long as the street in front of Minli's house. If he stretched himself up on his arms and legs, he was as tall as a bird's nest in a tree. She realized. Another symbol. Even now, bending down for her, he was higher than her house. So do you see how all those things help you understand how tall the dragon is? It gives you some perspective. It's figurative. That's called a simile, using like, as, or than in order to help you understand something that might not make total sense to you. Brings the unfamiliar in connection with the familiar. It's called a simile. Okay, so anyway, but he bent his elbow for her like a step with two hands. She boosted herself up and then climbed onto his back. The round ball on the dragon's head was the size of a small melon, just big enough for her to wrap two hands around, and she clutched it as the dragon began to move. It was faster, but not much. The dragon was nimble, but his large body had to constantly maneuver around trees and rocks, so it was awkward going. The constant jerking made Minli feel like she was riding a huge water buffalo. As the dragon ducked underneath branches and swerved through trees, Minli understood why most dragons flew. "Dragon," Minli asked suddenly, "how old are you?" "Old?" the dragon said, and again it seemed a question he had never been asked. "I do not know." "Well," Minli said, "how long have you been in this forest?" The dragon thought hard. "A long time," he told her. "I remember when a bird flew from the sky and dropped a peach pit on the ground. I watched that pit grow into a tree, and the peaches fell from the tree, and more trees grew from the pits of those peaches until it became a grove of peach trees that the monkeys have now taken over." He is very old, Minli thought to herself, imagining the growth of trees. Dragon must have been in this forest for 100 years. And she felt a pang of pity as she imagined the dragon alone, unable to fly, endlessly struggling between trees and branches. After picking up her things and drinking at the freshwater stream, Minli climbed back onto the dragon's back. Soon she fell asleep, her head on the dragon's ball and her hand holding her rice bowl. Noticing she was asleep, the dragon moved slowly and quietly, even when the water from Minli's compass splashed and trickled down his nose. It was only when a loud shrieking filled the forest that Minli woke. It was such a wild and harsh noise that she bolted up, her eyes wide in fear. "Do not worry," the dragon told her. "It is just the monkeys." And it was the monkeys. Even though the sun was dimming, Minli could still see the monkeys clamoring in the trees. Even though Minli could not count that many of them, their screaming made it sound as if there were thousands. "We are getting close to the peach trees," the dragon told Minli, "and they're getting angry." "Stop here," Minli said. She climbed off the dragon's back, and she could still see the monkeys through the leaves and branches, their bared teeth flashing. "Those peach trees are exactly the direction we want to go," Minli said. "We have to get past the monkeys." "I could still force my way through, but the monkeys would attack you," Dragon said. "I am not sure if we could get you through unharmed. Listen to them." And the monkeys continued to scream. Minli covered her ears with her hands, but she could still hear them. It seemed like they were screeching. "Get away from here! Ours! Ours! All ours!" "You're right," Minli told the dragon. "They are not going to let us through." "But you said that that's the only way to Old Man of the Moon," said the dragon. "Correct?" Minli nodded. The monkey shrieks were starting to sound like hysterical laughter, getting louder and louder, like a volcano about to erupt. She looked from side to side, but the monkeys seemed to be everywhere. There was no way around them. Then the dragon said, "What are we going to do?" "Problem. How are they going to get out of this? Have you learned anything in the time that we've been reading together? I'm going to let you know that I remember this part. And without this part, we heard it in another one of our stories. I'm going to let you know, if you haven't, by any chance, listened to Where the Red Fern Grows, you need to go back and listen to Where the Red Fern Grows. I'm going to let you know that there is going to be a solution that we heard in Where the Red Fern Grows that is going to help us in this story. You have any memory of that? If not, listen for it. Okay, so remember the peaches. Remember, that is what the picture showed, right? So like, you get that, right? Now you understand. The peaches, they represent a forest. The dragon remembers a bird dropping a peach pit, that little seed in the middle of a peach, onto the ground, watching that grow into a tree, and then have peaches of its own. Then drop peaches, and a whole forest grows up around that tree. That's the one that the dragon one day happened to see begin, and now it's a whole forest of peaches. So now you know that. See? When you listen, it's amazing. So now check this picture out, chapter 14. Monkeys, peaches. And like I said, a solution that's going to come from Where the Red Fern Grows. Check it out. Chapter 14. Minli and the dragon had sat in the clearing and made camp for the night. As the sun fell and the moon rose, the dragon showed her how he could make sparks by scratching his claws against a stone, and they built a small campfire. As Minli and the dragon made no moves to go farther into the forest, the monkeys had quieted down, but they still watched. Pause. How did the fire start? What talent did the dragon have that Minli couldn't have done otherwise? Starting a fire. Everybody has talents. Everybody's got something to bring to the game. What's yours? That's what I'm talking about. Okay. There are plenty of peaches for all, Dragon said. Those monkeys do not have to be so greedy. Really? Minli asked. Yes, Dragon said. The monkeys are so foolish. They just want more and more, even when they do not need it. I have seen them refuse to let go of rotten mushrooms and fight over piles of mud. At those words, Minli sat up, her eyes flashed with quick thinking. Piles of mud. Suddenly, Minli remembered the two children fighting over their piles of mud as she had left the village. Do you remember? I remember. Instead of going inside for dinner, the children had clung to their pretend dishes of dirt. They were so foolish. Could the monkeys be that foolish? They were too selfish for trading or bribes, but maybe they were so greedy that they could be foolish enough to be tricked. Maybe if I'm going to make rice, Minli said abruptly. Oh, the dragon said, you must be hungry. Too bad we cannot get you some peaches. It's not for me, Minli said, and she smiled mysteriously. It's for the monkeys. The monkeys? The dragon said. Why? If you mean it as a gift or as a way to bribe them, it will not work. They will take it and eat it, but they still will not let you through. That's what I'm expecting, Minli said as she filled her pot with water and uncooked rice. She was bursting to tell the dragon her idea, but wasn't sure how much the monkeys understood of their words. She looked at him with sparkling eyes, but he only stared back blankly. You are? The dragon said. I do not understand. Don't worry, Minli said, and with her eagerness, she felt like the water she was boiling. I think I know how we can pass the monkeys. The dragon watched as Minli stirred the big pot of rice. Through the rising steam, he could see the beady eyes of all the monkeys glittering through the branches, like hundreds of diamonds as they watched as well. The monkeys are watching, he whispered to Minli. Good, she whispered back. I hope they are. When the rice was done, the pot was overflowing with snowy white rice. It was so heavy that to take it off the fire to cool, she had to ask the dragon to move it for her. Minli had the dragon place it very close to the trees where the monkeys were watching. Then Minli tied her fishnet over the rice and pot. Okay, you got it? Okay, so they boiled the rice, they brought out the giant pot, and there's a giant net surrounding the pot. Do you remember anything yet? Okay, I don't know. Are you trying? Are you thinking? Hey, Matt boy, good to see you, brother. All right, sorry. As Minli and the dragon turned away, they could hear the monkeys begin to chatter. That fishnet will not stop the monkeys from taking the rice, the dragon said. It is tightly woven, but their hands will probably fit through. I know, Minli said as she put out the fire. Let's pretend that we think the rice is safe and that we are letting it cool. Though puzzled, the dragon nodded. They placed themselves as far away. They placed themselves a far distance from the rice. Yet, still within sight, put out the fire and pretended to go to sleep. But Minli could not help peeking. Though she tried to lie still, she was filled with excitement. Would her plan work? Would the monkeys take the rice? In the bright light of the moon, the monkeys glanced slyly at them and stole over to the rice. The dragon was right. Just as he'd said, the fishnet could not keep the monkeys from getting into the rice. Their slender hands slid through the holes of the fishnet and each grabbed 2 giant fistfuls of rice. But as the monkeys tried to carry the rice away, the net caught them. The holes in the net were large enough for their empty hands to fit through, but not large enough to fit their full wrist. The monkeys screamed and pulled, and Minli and the dragon no longer pretended to be asleep. They couldn't help laughing as they watched the monkeys struggling to punch the air and each other with their trapped fists. Minli quickly packed her things, and the monkeys screeched and shrieked as they passed. The heavy pot of rice shook as the monkeys fought violently to get free, but the fishnet was strong and well woven. And since the monkeys were too greedy to let go of the rice, Minli and the dragon entered the peach grove and continued through the forest. Do you remember now? You remember Billy at the beginning? He had just gotten his dogs, but he needed to catch a raccoon, but the dogs couldn't catch a raccoon. And so somebody showed him how to put some nails into a hole in a tree, enough for the raccoon to sneak his hand through and then try to grab like marbles or something like that he put something sparkly down on the inside. And so they couldn't pull back. And then he caught his first raccoon. And then he was able to train them. So check that out. Same trick. You get it? If not, you should draw a picture of it because it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right. Chapter 15. Oh. Does that picture make any sense now? Greedy, greedy, greedy. It was giving you a hint as to what was coming up. So check out this one. Chapter 15. I don't know. Do you know? Can't think of it. I don't know. Ma and Ba sat in front of a small fire that Ba had built. Their disappointment at not having found Minli forced them to admit their exhaustion, and they had slept under the canopy of tree branches during the day, leaving their silver goldfish as a guardian. By the time they'd awakened, it was late afternoon, but neither of them made any attempt to move. Neither spoke, but both knew they were unsure whether to go forward or whether to go back. While the sun burst into multicolored flames on the horizon, its last wave goodbye before surrendering to the night, Ma handed Ba a bowl of rice porridge. Neither of them spoke as they ate, both thinking about the goldfish man's words. Should they let Minli try to change their fortune? Should they stop looking and, like the goldfish man said, trust her? Ba sighed. Pause. What should they do? What do you think? Are you going to guarantee that Minli is going to survive this adventure? What, just because it's a book? You think just because every book and every fairy tale seems to have a happy ending? I've read some fairy tales that don't have terribly happy endings. And so here's the deal. You need to understand that they are having a big crisis right now. Their little daughter, who is willful, she has certain characteristics, but the reality is that they both love her. And imagine what people might think if they just go back to the village. You left her alone out there by themselves? See what I'm saying? Like, there's going to be questions. Why didn't you keep looking for your daughter? Wouldn't that be probably what the news people would ask your parents? Like, you can't just trust them. That gets us in trouble today. So they love their daughter. Should they stop looking and, like the goldfish man, trust her? Ba sighed. Trying to find Minli is like trying to find the paper of happiness, Ba said out loud to himself. What paper of happiness? A voice said. Ba looked sharply around. Who had said that? He looked at Ma, but she continued to stir her porridge, obviously unaware. Ba shook his head. Perhaps his weariness was making him imagine things. Tell the story, old man. She's listening. The voice spoke again. She won't admit it, but she wants to hear it too. Ba looked around again. It seemed like the voice was coming from the goldfish. He looked closely at the bowl. Was it the firelight that made it glow like that? The fish stared back at him calmly, as if waiting. So Ba took a deep breath and began to tell his story. The story of the paper of happiness. Once, long ago, a long, long time ago, a family grew famous for their happiness. It seemed odd that this would happen, but they were truly an unusual household. Even though aunts and uncles, cousins and grandchildren lived together, there was never a cross word or unhappy noise. All were polite and thoughtful to each other. Even the chickens did not fight each other to feed. It was said even the babies were born smiling. Stories of their happiness spread like seeds in the wind, sprouting and blooming everywhere, until finally even young Magistrate Tiger heard of them. We're back at Magistrate Tiger. Even though he had just begun his position, this was before his son was born, the bellowing, roaring magistrate was already called Magistrate Tiger. Impossible, he scoffed. The stories are exaggerated. No family can be that happy. But even so, he was curious and sent an emissary to the family to observe. Pause. Emissary. But even so, he was curious and sent an emissary to the family to observe. What do you think emissary means? Emissary. He was curious, so he sent an emissary to the family to observe. So observing means to watch, right? So I think Magistrate Tiger has sent someone to observe whether they truly are that happy or not. The Magistrate Tiger's not going to do it. He's like the emperor of the whole wide world, right? The emissary returned, awed. Your magnificence. It is just as the stories say, he says. I observed the family for a full moon, and not one sad or angry word was even whispered. The adults are loving and faithful. The children are gracious and respectful, and all honor the grandfather with an esteem that rivals the gods. Even the dogs do not bark, but wait patiently to be fed. The family circle is one of complete harmony. That's impossible, the magistrate said, astonished. But as he thought about it, the more he began to wonder, what was the secret that the family had? They must have some magical charm or hidden knowledge, and this began to irritate him. He began to covet the family's happiness. I am the magistrate, he thought. If there is a secret to happiness, I should have it. So he called his emissary to him and presented him with an empty, heavily encrusted chest and a company of soldiers. Return to the family, Magistrate Tiger ordered, and tell them that I want the secret of their happiness put on in this box. If they do not do so, have the soldiers destroy their home. The emissary did as he was told. When the troop of soldiers surrounded the house, the family looked fearful. But when the magistrate's demands was announced, the grandfather smiled. "That's easy enough," he said, and he had the trunk brought into the house and returned in moments. "It is done. I have put the secret of our happiness inside the box," he said, "and you may take it. We hope it serves our magistrate well." The emissary was slightly surprised as the soldiers marched through the night with only the light of the moon to guide them. The treasure box, lying on a platform, carried 4 men, seemed to glow. However, as the ground grew rocky and steep, a wind blew, like the mountain itself was yawning. One of the soldiers stumbled in the rising dust, and the box crashed to the ground. The lid of the box flew off, and, like a freed butterfly, a single sheet of paper fluttered out. "Get it!" the emissary shouted at the soldiers. "Don't lose the secret!" But despite his yells, the paper seemed to be able to escape the soldiers' flailing arms. One soldier almost caught it. His very fingertips touched the page, but another sudden wind burst through the air and stole it away. Silently, the emissary and the soldiers watched the paper lift higher and higher and higher into the night sky until it overlapped the moon and disappeared. The emissary had no choice but to return it to the palace with an empty box. The emissary had no choice but to return to the palace with an empty box. As he relayed the story, Magistrate Tiger, not surprisingly, was enraged. "You lost it? It was a paper?" the magistrate roared. "What was on it?" "Your Magnificence," the emissary trembled. "As I felt the secret was for your eyes only, I did not read the paper before it was lost. However, as it was in the air, all could see that there was a single line of words on it." "What did the line say?" the magistrate demanded. "I do not know, Magistrate," the emissary said, "but there was one soldier who almost caught it and was closest to it. Perhaps he was able to read the line." So the soldier was called in, and very humbly did he bow. He was little more than a boy and had only recently joined the magistrate's army from a small, poor, faraway village. "You," the magistrate said, "you were the only soldier close enough to the paper to read the line. What did it say?" The boy flushed and his head touched the floor as he bowed again. "Great Magistrate, I am your poor servant," he said. "I was close enough to see the line on the page. However, I cannot read." Can't read. Freedom. Told you. Sorry, I'll start again. "I was close enough to see the lines on the page. However, I cannot read. I do not know what the line said." Magistrate Tiger scowled with irritation, and the emissary and the soldiers shivered. I did notice something," the soldier said. "What?" the magistrate demanded. "There was only one character on the page," the soldier said. "The line was one word written over and over and over again many times." "One word," the magistrate snarled, and his anger seemed to burn deep in his eyes. "What one word is the secret to the happiness? One word is the secret to happiness. It was a trick. The family must have thought that they could deceive me. Emissary, gather all my troops. I personally will get the secret of happiness and punish that family of lowly dogs." So the next day, with Magistrate Tiger and his entire army prepared for destruction, the emissary led the way to the home of the happy family. But when they arrived, nothing, and I mean nothing, was there. No house, no chickens or sheep, no family. Instead, there was only a flat plain, as if the whole home had been scooped from the earth. Magistrate Tiger scowled at the blank ground with rage and vowed to punish the family for their disrespect. But while he glared, the wind blew and covered him with a grayish-green dust. As he stood like a green powdered statue, he felt as if the sky were laughing at him. "So, I think Minli, like the secret word and the paper of happiness," Ba said, "is not meant to be found." He glanced at Ma, and while she did not meet his gaze, she made no objection either. And tomorrow, Ba continued gently, we should return and wait for her to come home. Again, Ma said nothing, but barely, perhaps only because he was looking for it. She nodded. Ba nodded back at her and quietly took some rice and dropped it into the fishbowl. So, that was an awesome set of chapters. It started with Ma and Ba being concerned about their daughter and wondering a very important question, right? Should we let her go or should we not? And then we got to see Minli come up with a clever plan to get them through the monkeys, which we had heard about in another one of our readings from another book, as long as we were paying attention. They are on their way to the peach pit, and Ba is told by the silver goldfish that he should tell the story. And because of that, what does Mom choose? Ma chooses to allow Minli to go and search. Because of that story, she changed her mind. So I read a little long. I'm sorry. Pardon me. We had to read that piece. So do you see, sometimes you got to read for an extra 5 minutes because you're in the middle of a chapter. But that was huge. That whole chunk today was all about the decision of whether or not Ma or Ba and Ba are going to agree to allow Minli to go on this adventure. They have to surrender, that they have to give up a little bit. And so it is New Year's Eve, and it is time to get our party on, right? It has been an amazing year, an astounding year, one unlike any that I have ever experienced in my life before. And this whole thing started because of it, so I'm super grateful for that. I'm still teaching. I'm still in love. Got a beautiful garden. The weather's nice. You're here. I'm reading. I can read. Now that soldier, if he was taught and he didn't take it for granted, or maybe he was just so poor and their culture doesn't just teach the poor people. So the idea of a free education, the fact that you come in and listen to stories and want to learn something, want to understand at a deeper level something that maybe you're struggling with, maybe that's a goal for 2021. Get stronger at it, right? So I am going to see you tomorrow morning at 11 Eastern Standard. That means my friends out in Washington, that's at 8 a.m. on New Year's Day. I got to see you though. So anyway, what I'm going to say is happy, happy, happy New Year's, but don't take a day for granted. Do something amazing today so that when you rest your head on your pillow, you feel like something changed. Who knows? Maybe you'll discover a dragon in the woods. Anyway, Happy New Year, and I'll look forward to seeing you. Bye, Mag. Thank you so much for your time. Grateful. I love you all. Happy New Year, and get out of here. Woo!